Welcome, everyone. I'm Sue Barber, author, former IT director for a Fortune 500 company, turned executive coach, and this is the Visibility Factor podcast, where we explore how to raise your visibility and play bigger at work and in life. We'll explore key topics and welcome guests that help you shift your thinking about yourself so you can see new possibilities for your leadership. I'm on a mission to create a visibility movement for leaders to show their value and be seen for their true talent. Are you ready to take the next step towards a higher level of visibility for yourself? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visibility Factor podcast. This is Sue Barber, your host. I'm thrilled today to bring you my guest, Janet Falk, and she has great experience in terms of PR and helping people get visibility for the great things that they're doing. And I'm so excited for her to share some things about her book and other case studies that she's done where she's gotten people on TV in very short notice. So I'd love to have you share some background and introduce yourself, Janet. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. So I appreciate your inviting me, and I'm excited to speak to your audience. Let me explain a little bit about my background. When you go to my website, you'll see that my logo is the letter F for my name, Falk, and it's embedded in an octagon. And I use that shape because I am not a round peg. I am not a square peg. I am an octagonal peg. That means I have worked in a variety of institutions and a variety of sectors. These include higher education, financial services, Wall Street, law, nonprofit, and entrepreneurship. So I have, worked with international companies and with small businesses and with law firms. And I'm delighted to tap these experiences regarding visibility and how one can become more known.
Love that. And my goodness, I didn't even know all of the industries you've been a part of. What is it about what you do that is making a difference for people when they come to work with you? What is the first couple of things you help them with?
One thing that people want is to be seen in the news. They want to be seen in the news so that potential clients, lapsed clients, potential employers, potential hires that they could bring into their organization, colleagues who work in other sectors or might want to build alliances with them, conference organizers. People want to be seen in the news because they have an idea. They have an insight. And if only someone else knew what Sue and Janet know, then they would save time, save money, and make more money. So having the opportunity to introduce my clients to reporters to expound upon their insight is something that really drives me. But before I can introduce someone to a reporter who will interview them, get them in a news story, and make their phone ring, before I can introduce someone to a reporter, I have to make sure that their digital presence really conveys their authority. So I take a deep look at their LinkedIn profile, at their presence and their company website, and I make sure that it is commensurate with their stature. So those are some things that I think about when I'm dealing with clients. It's not only getting in the news, however, there are other opportunities for you to be in front of your target audience. There are speaking opportunities. There are opportunities to write blog posts or to publish articles, ebooks, case studies, and so on. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about this as we go through the conversation.
I'm curious, are you seeing shifts? Because a lot of people are talking about, podcasts being a medium that a lot of people are using to get their messages out now, or other things in other social media platforms versus going on traditional media. Have you seen that shift, or is that really not true?
I think we have to look at it a little bit differently. We have to look at it from the perspective of what I call content multiplication. So everything that you're doing should be shared across a variety of platforms. I'll give you an example of what I call content multiplication. I'm a member of a professional membership organization, Women-Owned Law, which is women who are attorneys who have their own firm or a solo practice, and women-owned businesses that serve the legal market. And in advance of a conference that they were going to have, I wrote an article for their monthly newsletter about how to make the most of that conference opportunity. And I talked about maybe 20 different activities that one could pursue. Then I thought, after the conference, this was such great material. I'm going to use this for my own monthly newsletter, which I did as a 2-part series. Now, one of the subscribers to my monthly newsletter works at a continuing legal education provider. And she asked me if I would adapt my newsletter so that she could publish it on her company's website. So I decided that would be a good idea to get my thoughts in front of more people. So now we have an article in a membership organization's newsletter, my own monthly newsletter, and an online service to the legal industry. I went another step and I thought, this would be a great webinar. Let me get one of my clients to talk with me, and I'll be the person who's the attendee at the conference, and she will be the person who's the speaker at the conference. So that'll give a little richness and texture to the conversation. So we had this webinar. And then I decided this needs to be heard by even more people. So I introduced myself to attorney bar associations as a speaker. And I introduced myself to legal marketing podcasters as a guest. This is content multiplication. Look at how this content has traveled. It went from being a newsletter article to my own newsletter, to an online article, to a webinar, to conference presentations, and to podcasts. So I think we have to look at this idea of what is the role of podcasting, what is the role of media as multiple venues for ideas to be shared with, at times, overlapping audiences.
Wow, I love that example. It's amazing to see how it went through all of those iterations and still valuable to each group or each, organization that read it or talked about it or heard about it from you and others. I love that you talk about that, because one of the things that you and I first talked about when we met is you said, everyone knows someone worth knowing. And I thought that was really, really clever of you to share that with me, because it made me think about, I think sometimes people hesitate to be known. They have their own challenges, right, of being visible. And I wondered if you could share a little bit more insight into why you share that with people and how they can start to think about themselves and the value that they bring in a bigger way.
Sure. A corollary to everybody knows someone worth knowing is it's not the first person that you meet. So let's reflect for a moment on how you and I met. We were both invited to attend a virtual networking event for professional women. I didn't even know the host, Leah Neanderthal. Maybe you knew her, but I decided, well, this could be a fun event and it's virtual and I'm going to meet some interesting women. Something could come of it. And look, something did come of it. I met you and we had a conversation, and now I'm a guest on your podcast. But let me give another example. I often talk about this one. I attended a networking event, and this was for an organization of diverse professionals who all serve the nonprofit sector. So I'm there as a public relations professional, someone else is a grant writer, someone else is an outsourced CFO, and so on. At this event, I met someone named Rachel, and she had just graduated with her master's in public administration. And we got in a conversation, and I asked her what was her interest in the field, and she said social enterprise. Oh my, I thought, I have to introduce you to Bruce. Look, I see him on the other side of the room. Let's go talk to him. Because I knew that Bruce was a consultant in social enterprise. Oh, I took Rachel. We walked across the room. They had a conversation. I excused myself so that they could talk privately. And time passed. And wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later, Bruce gets in touch with me and says, "Thank you so much for introducing me to Rachel. I hired her."
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Now, Rachel was looking for a job, and she went to a networking event thinking she would meet other people interested in nonprofit organizations. Did she plan to meet me? Did she plan to meet Bruce? No, but I was the glue that connected them and sparked a conversation. Now, do you think Bruce was planning to hire someone when he went to that event? No, I don't think so. But I think what happened was he recognized her competence, her capabilities, her skills. And he thought, if I hire this Rachel, then she will be able to handle some of my projects and I'll be able to go out and get more business so that I can continue to pay her. I imagine that's what his thinking was, and that's what her thinking was, and that's what happened. So you can see that with Rachel, it was not me, the first person that she met, right? It was someone who I knew in my circle who happened to be in the room at that very moment. And so I could make that connection happen. And it worked out very well for the two of them.
That's such a cool story. And just look what you made happen. Just, knowing the right people and knowing that they could get together and have a conversation, right? You had no idea it was going to turn into a job offer for her either. So let's talk about networking, because I think since we're at this stage, it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And I wonder what advice you would give people. So what they should do before they go, what they should do while they're there, and what they should do after.
Okay. I have a very specific system that I use if I'm going to a networking event for the first time. I go to the website of the host organization and I identify who are the key leaders of the organization. And by that, I mean president, the vice president, the membership chair, and the program chair. They know everybody in the organization. They are the movers and shakers. What I do is I send them an email in advance of the event, and the subject line is, will we meet at the networking event on, say, March 1st? And then I explain, your name came into view as an officer of the such and such organization. I'm planning to attend the networking event on March 1st. I'm interested in learning more about your group and becoming a member because we have a shared interest, right? One of my clients is a member, or we work in the same industry, or whatever it is that you share in common. And then I say, I look forward to meeting you there. Sue, if you were to get an email like this, and you're an officer of the organization, and you find out that someone is planning to attend the networking event, what would you think and what would you do?
I mean, I think you're going the extra step, right, to even find my name, because a lot of people don't even know the officers of these organizations. So I think it would be showing that you are taking initiative and interest in the organization and wanting to have a good conversation.
Right. And what would you do?
Of course, I would find you. Respond back and say, yes, I'd love to meet you, right? And say, yes, let's make that happen.
Right, exactly. You would respond back because you want to promote membership and the health of the activities of the organization. Now, what am I going to do when you respond to me? I'm going to write you back and say, Sue, I'm even more excited to attend this event. And because there are going to be a lot of people there and it's very crowded, I will wear this distinctive article of clothing. So I will wear a red jacket, or if I'm a gentleman, I will wear a red pocket square, so that you will be sure to find me in this very crowded room. So now we have already started the conversation. I am not walking into that room cold. By contacting you and the other officers of the organization, I am building a welcoming committee. I have people who want to meet me. I have people who want to recruit me to become a member of the organization. So that's what you do before, is you identify the leaders of the group and you contact them. And if you can't find their email address, you can always find them on LinkedIn. Okay, so now we're getting ready for the event. I look you up on LinkedIn as an officer because I want to see what you look like. I want to see your photo. And when I arrive at the registration desk and I get my name tag, I say, is Sue here? I'm supposed to meet her. And then the person at the desk, of course, knows Sue because you're an officer and says, oh, yes, she's the one over there in the yellow jacket. I go up to you and I say, hi, Sue, I'm Janet Falk. We were in email correspondence. I'm so excited to meet you. Tell me, what are your plans for the organization? So now I have a conversation with you, and it's not about myself. It's about what you do with the organization, and you're excited to meet me because you want to bring in more members, right? And so we have this wonderful conversation, and finally I say, Sue, I've really enjoyed talking with you. Let's keep in touch. May I have your business card? I get your card, and I say, by the way, I have a monthly newsletter. If you'd like to subscribe, let me know. Of course, you're going to say yes, because it's very hard to say no in that situation.
Yeah.
And now here's the third thing I'm going to say, which is, Sue, I'd really like to meet Pat, the president of the organization. Can you introduce me? And once again, you can't say no. How can you say no? So you and I go over to see Pat and we have a conversation. And I say, Pat, I just enjoyed talking with Sue so much. She has some great ideas. Now what happens is Pat thinks, oh, that's Sue. She's doing a great job. She's bringing in new members. And Sue thinks, that Janet Falk, she just made me look brilliant in front of Pat, the president of the organization. I love her. So now we're going to take a selfie of the three of us. Okay. And then you will go on and, meet other people. And in talking with Pat, I will find out more about the organization. And then I'll say, is there anyone else here that you think I should meet? And she'll say, oh, yes, you should go talk to Jean. And I said, can you introduce me? She said, well, I really have to take care of something else. So I go over to Jean and I say, hi, Jean, I'm Janet Falk. Pat told me to meet you. And this is how you work the room. You identify the leaders. You get each of the leaders to introduce you to the next person. And then you have a conversation with your welcoming committee, people who want you to get involved in the organization and who will be talking to you so that you will want to join. Now, of course, you've gotten this preparation down. You've gotten your conversations down. Now you're going to go home and you're going to review the business cards of the people that you met. And you're going to add them to your newsletter list if they have agreed. And you're going to follow up and say how much you enjoyed meeting them, how much you enjoyed meeting, drop any other names of the people that you met too, and how you're going to join the organization if in fact you've decided to join, or how you want to keep in touch with them, connect with them on LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. This is a process that I find very few people do. I have published and spoken extensively about my pre-event marketing approach, and it really makes you stand out, as you indicated already. Someone who has done their due diligence, someone who has invested in looking into the organization, finding out more about it, and it will make you more memorable to the people that you have contacted.
I mean, that's fantastic. Honestly, I hope everyone's paying attention and can jot those notes down, because I remember going to a women's conference back when I was at Kraft, and I was standing there talking to a group of people, and this woman came up to me and she said, hi, Sue. And I'm looking at her and I have no idea who she is. And I said, hi. And she said, I looked you up. I knew you were going to be here. I found out what you look like, and I wanted to talk to you if you have some time. And I immediately, just like we just said, right? I immediately thought, wow, she took the initiative to find out who I am, what I look like, and come introduce herself. And, I still am connected with her today. And I feel like that is the initiative that a lot of people don't take, to your point. I think a lot of people go and whoever they meet, and they don't necessarily do anything to follow up after either. They may spend the time in the meeting or in the conversation wherever they're at, and they maybe link in with them even, but they never actually have a further conversation. And maybe sometimes that doesn't make sense, but there are plenty of times where it does make sense. Why do you think people don't kind of go that last step and keep the relationship going?
Because it requires giving of yourself, and it requires taking that extra step. I find that in my conversations, I always try to offer something to another person. It may be a newsletter that I've written. It may be an article that I've read. It may be something that I heard on a webinar or a podcast. I always try to offer something to someone else, because then they will feel obligated to write back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
So I take a more proactive approach. It's difficult to make headway if you're passive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just a little fear of some people, especially if they're more introverted, having some of these conversations and not knowing what to say. Do you have some go-to things that you share with clients when they're going into these types of events that would help them, and maybe by, default here, help the audience understand, some ideas of some things, some tips you share?
Right. So let me say that I have outlined this process in an ebook that I have that's available on my website for free. It's called something like, 3 Lessons for More Success in Networking, something like that. One question that I like to ask is, in our culture, we're really not encouraged to brag. We're really supposed to, not promote ourselves overly much. And people that do are looked at negatively. So I like to give people the opportunity to brag. And this is the question that I use to do so. I say, tell me about something that you did that was the highlight of your year or was the highlight of the quarter for you working with one of your clients. And I don't mean the team. I mean something that it would not have happened if you were not there to make it happen. Now, what happens with this question? First, it gives the person the opportunity to brag, which is something that they don't ordinarily do. Second, it tells me what kind of clients do they like to work with. It could be an internal client within a large corporation, or it could be, a paying customer. And it also tells me what kind of problems do they like to solve, and what solutions do they bring to the table. So by asking this, what was the highlight of your year working with a client question, I get to find out a lot of information about a person. And because they were successful doing this, of course they want to brag about it and they want to tell me about it. Now, whatever they tell me about, I say, that sounds so interesting and so difficult. Tell me, how did you do that? And then they have to delve into a little more detail and, provide more description, which again tells me more about the solution that they provide. Now, I believe in life there are 2 kinds of people. There are people with problems and there are people with solutions, right? And so a la Rachel and Bruce, my role is to find the person with the problem and find the appropriate solution and put them together. So when I learn what was the highlight of your year, I get to understand what are the solutions that you bring, what are the problems that you solve, and who are the people or the companies that you're looking to bring to the table.
Wow. That's really fast. I mean, one question, right? I mean, obviously follow-up questions, but I do think that there are a lot of people who struggle to think about the things that they do and see them as valuable because they're just good at them already. And so to them, and I had the same challenge myself, it just comes naturally. And so we don't think of it as, oh my gosh, I solved this really big complex problem or delivered this big program. I just do my job. And I do think digging into it a little bit more, having another person ask you that opens up the door, because you're not having to think about it for yourself other than to share the information. But if that other person can really dig in like you did, I think that's so fabulous because it helps the person see that what they did was actually valuable and that they could talk about it with other people in a way that doesn't feel like they're bragging, that they can talk about it in a way that's just sharing information. That's kind of how I frame it to people, is you're just sharing information. You're just sharing facts about what you did. And other people are going to see the value of that when you talk about it in the best way. So love that. It's kind of like we marry our two things together. Yeah. Okay. I also know that you have a book, and I would love for you to share about your book. And I really want to know how you came into the place of putting it with a baseball, mindset around it. I think it's going to help people understand it a little bit more, but talk about your book. I've read it. It's great.
Okay. So I call this Create Your Marketing RBI. And in baseball, I don't know if you're a big fan, but RBI is runs batted in. And that's the way you can win the game. You score more runs than the other team. Now, I view this as 5 strategies so that you can improve your marketing, or even in your framework, you can improve your visibility. So the first one is networking, which we've already discussed. And I call that getting on base, because you have to get on base in order to score a run. And there are different ways that you can be networking. We've already discussed going to a networking event, so I'm not going to go into that much further. The second way is speaking. And I call that here's the pitch, which is what the announcer says during the baseball game. And there are opportunities galore for speaking. You can be on a podcast, as we are now. You can be presenting to your networking group. You can be presenting to a community organization. You can be creating your own webinar, or you can be creating your own video to showcase what it is that you understand about a given topic. Now, the third one is writing. I call that keeping the box score. The box score is when you write down what every batter did when they came up. Writing has a variety of outlets as well. I have a monthly newsletter. You can also have a blog. You can also publish articles. I mentioned that I published an article in the monthly newsletter of my professional membership organization. And you can be sharing your ideas in multiple ways across these various outlets. So let's go back. We have networking, speaking, writing. Now, the fourth way I call root for the home team. That means get involved in the professional membership organization of your target market. Now, I mentioned that I was a member of Women-Owned Law because I work with attorneys, right? But I'm a member of some other networking groups as well. And there I bring my special skill of writing and editing to their monthly newsletter. And finally, we have promote everything that you do online, which I call cover all the bases. And that means when you're going to a networking event, you announce, looking forward to the networking event where I'm going to meet Sue Barber and Pat and Jean and whoever else you've contacted. And then after the event, you say, great discussion at the networking event where I met Sue and Pat and Jean and whoever else. You can also be posting online when you're speaking at an event or when you're speaking on a podcast, which you post about your podcast, and I'm going to post that I was a guest here. You can be posting online about your monthly newsletter or when you publish an article so that more people who don't subscribe to your newsletter will be able to find out about it. For example, my monthly newsletter goes to about 1,000 subscribers. But my LinkedIn newsletter, which is my monthly newsletter published on LinkedIn, goes to an additional 700 people. So that's way up. That's how that works. And when you're engaged with a professional membership organization of your target market, you're going to be sharing their activities and promoting your interaction with the members and so on. So those are 5 ways that one can be raising your visibility through networking, speaking, writing, being active in the trade association of your target market, and promoting what you do online. And I have templates for how you can pursue these activities. For example, how to introduce yourself to a podcast host, how to introduce yourself to someone to be a speaker at an event. And the book is available as an ebook on my website for $9.99 if I have them both.
I love that, because everybody who's, especially people who are baseball fans, will totally understand and be able to remember the 5 steps. And I think what is really fascinating is you always kind of go the extra step to highlight whoever it is you're connecting with, right? With their organization or the person and what you learned from them, and giving them the spotlight. So you're giving yourself the spotlight, but you're also sharing it with whoever you met with or whatever group that you're a part of. And I have found that to be very beneficial as well. Whenever I speak, I will highlight the group and share their website in the links so that people can see and learn more about them. And I got the kindest, phone call from a person that I did that for. And they said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you shared that. Thank you so much." I'm like, "Of course, that you guys took the time to have me come in and speak. Of course, I want to share your group because I think that they're doing amazing things." So I think it's just really being thoughtful and going the next step into making sure that you're doing the best for the experience of your own visibility, but also for others as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always say it's not about me, it's about you.
Mm-hmm.
And who is the you who's on the other side of the table or on the other side of the article, on the other side of the screen, right? You want to find a way that person will connect with your insight. Mm-hmm. And the other point that you make about promoting the organization is not everybody was in the room at that time. So if you weren't in the room, you still can get the benefit of learning what it was that was discussed in the room. And then if you're so intrigued, you'll be able to follow up with the person who was the speaker and so on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know everybody is going to take away at least one nugget, but many more today of the conversation. And I'm really excited that you came on because obviously you're working with maybe a different target market than I am. But I think there's so much crossover that we can have that people don't always consider, right? And the one last question I have for you is, what led you to this place of thinking this way? About thinking about how to have conversations and the value and connecting people together. What helped you get there?
I think several things. One is I started my career as a college professor. And so I had to make study of Spanish language accessible to my students. I always had to come up with examples that would contrast what they were learning in Spanish to what they already knew about English, but they had never thought about it because it was so much a part of the fabric of their life and their conversation that they forgot how they learned it. So coming up with analogies and examples is something that I do very comfortably in order to explain what is complicated and make it more simple. Now, having moved from education to Wall Street to law, I'm often explaining things to people who have somewhat of a knowledge base, but maybe not completely in the very narrow sector of what it is that I'm talking about. And in most instances, I'm learning it myself as well. So I have to find a reason why someone else will care about what it is that I'm going to tell them and how I'm going to simplify it in a way that they will be able to latch onto it. I often use the example of what I call the 4 A's. So the first A is analogy. Right? So I use the analogy of baseball in order to talk about, marketing. Right? The second way is anecdote. I use the example of how I connected Rachel and Bruce as an example of how it's not the first person that you meet, right? But someone else who stands in their circle. So we have analogy, anecdote, then we also have acronym, okay? So we have acronym, which is when you take something and you change a well-known acronym so that people will remember it differently. So you think about ASAP and you make it as soon as profitable. Mm-hmm. So people will remember that you gave it a little twist, okay? And finally, the fourth A is alliteration. Look at what I've done. Analogy, acronym, anecdote, alliteration. Now you're going to remember the 4 A's. So when you ask me, how is it that I came to be able to communicate in this way? I think those are examples of, experiences that I've had, training that I've had, dealing with people in order to get them to remember what it is that I need them to think about. But it's not just what I need you to think about. What do I want you to do next? So you have to make that also a part of your delivery. Once you understand what it is that we've been discussing, now what are you going to do with that information? Are you going to make a phone call? Are you going to click on a link? Are you going to request more information? Are you going to buy a ticket? Are you going to show up at an event? And so on.
I think it's really helpful for people. And I can tell you come from an education background because you go back through and make sure people are following along with your story or your examples. And I think that is something that not everybody does. And so sometimes people can get lost in the explanations. And I think you've done an amazing job of going through and using stories and anecdotes and acronyms and analogies throughout this conversation today. And I know that people are going to be able to start to think about that for their own networking conversations or their own explanations in front of their manager, right, of what they've done or what they could be doing. And I think it will be easy to use. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's amazing. Where can people get in touch with you and go to your website? Can you share that with us?
Sure. My website is my name, Janet, Janet, L for love, Falk, F is France, ALK, Janet, L for love, FALK.com. And I'm also active on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'll share those links in the notes with everybody. And now we're going to transition into what I call the Rise Up and Be Visible Quick Tips. So these are the 4 questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is, what do you think visibility is and why did you answer that way?
So visibility to me is being recognized for your achievements and being tapped for your skills to take on the next opportunity. And this applies to your professional activities. But let's look beyond the 4 walls of your department or your division or your company and think about the other entities that you are involved with, which could be within your industry, within your profession, within your community organization, within your virtual community. So I think being recognized for your achievements and being tapped for your skills to move on to the next opportunity.
Love that. What are you doing to be visible?
I'm doing my 5 activities of working, speaking, writing, being active in the trade association of my target market, and, promoting everything that I do online.
Yeah, you're practicing what you preach.
Yes. I should add that every Thursday at 8 p.m., I have an appointment with myself. And I check mentally, have I engaged in all of those 5 activities? And if I have not, I still have Friday where I can do one more.
make it happen.
Right.
I love that. Just a simple check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And what is the best career or leadership advice you've received?
So I don't know that I received this advice, but I learned it along the way. And that is, you are in the you business. Nobody else is. And nobody else is going to help you promote the you business. I mean, not your employees, not your clients, not your supervisor. You have to be promoting yourself and raising, as you say, your visibility. Now, I learned this the other day that a former aide to Governor Mario Cuomo of New York quoted his boss, and he said, "If you don't blow your own horn, there's no music."
That's amazing.
Right. And to follow on the baseball theme, what did Babe Ruth say? He said, "Every strike brings me closer to the next home run." So don't be dissuaded when something doesn't go your way, you don't get a response, and so on. I mean, we were talking about how people are afraid to follow up after networking. Listen, it's an either or decision. They'll either respond or they won't.
Right.
But every strike brings you closer to your next home run, to your next valuable connection.
Love it. And there's no need to take it personally, right? They might just be busy. They might have other things going on, and it isn't about you, right? It's just you put yourself out there, and they have the opportunity to do something with that, and you can follow up again, which is also your choice, right?
Right.
The last question is, what is a book that you would recommend to the audience?
So the book I suggest is Everybody Writes by Ann Handley, Handley. And she has a lot of ideas and a lot of tips, very basic, that can be easily applied. So one thing that she suggests is that you ask yourself a question. Why am I writing this? What's my take? And why does it matter to my readers? And if you think about it, it's very similar to what I talked about. One thing that I deal with all the time in introducing my clients to reporters is, why you? Why should anyone listen to you when there are so many other people who do what you do? And the second question is, why now? What is happening now in the industry or with the law or in the marketplace or that is different and people need to know about it? So why you? Why now? And then the third question I always frame is, why should anyone care? And as I said earlier in our conversation, how will someone else save time, save money, or make more money with that idea? So you can see how Ann Handley's idea of why am I writing this? What's my take? Why does it matter? Really aligns with my approach. And it's a great book. I recommend. Everybody Writes.
I love it. Okay. Well, I will put that in the show notes as well. I have heard of it, but I don't believe I have that one. So I will definitely put it on my Kindle. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and all of your knowledge and what you do to help people really be seen wherever that may be, right? Writing or speaking or on TV, whatever that looks like for them. But I think just all of these ideas, people are going to be able to take and leverage for themselves, which is always a goal of the podcast for me, is making ideas easy and accessible and something that they can take away and start using right away. So thank you for all of the things that you shared today. And thank you for being here.
No, it's my pleasure, Sue. And I want to mention also that on my website, janetlfalk.com, I have a lot of materials that I give away as resources for free. There are tip sheets on best practices, resources, templates, and they deal with LinkedIn profiles, networking, newsletters, publishing articles, introducing yourself to reporters, and so on. And all of them are ways to become more visible within your organization and beyond those four walls.
Love that. And I was out on your website this morning and I saw all of that. So definitely take her up on that and leverage those things and turn them into something that you can use for you in your specific situation. Some of the things she's talking about are for lawyers, but you can, we used examples here where you can turn them into other things that really resonate for you and what you need to do in your business or in your company or whatever it is you're trying to do. So thank you again for being here, Janet. Thanks everybody for joining today on the Visibility Factor podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Visibility Factor podcast. Remember that visibility starts with small steps that are intentional and consistent each day. Be bold, be visible, be the leader you were meant to be. Find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, which are highlighted in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Visibility Factor podcast.